Hey friends, I'm Georgie. The warmest of welcomes to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. In today's episode, I'll be chatting to Rebecca Lazarou, aka Laz the Plant Scientist. Rebecca is a medicinal plant researcher at Kew Gardens, and she's made it her personal mission to help bridge the gap between science and natural medicines, as well as spreading the word of the power of plants. Rebecca and I got talking all about the crossover of spirituality and science, the do's and don'ts when it comes to taking plant medicine, as well as remedies for common ailments such as anxiety, PMS, and the menopause. Rebecca's passion and wealth of knowledge is awe-inspiring, and I hope you get as much from this conversation as I did. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Breathe podcast. Let's keep on building that strong, breathing community. Let's keep connecting people. Let's keep inspiring people. The more people talking about breathing, the better. All right, let's jump right into this plant-powered conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. This is episode 17 of Just Breathe with Rebecca Lazarou. Hey Rebecca, welcome to the Just Breathe podcast. How's it going?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. So honestly, I want to dive straight in. You are a is it herbalist or herbologist? I'm never quite sure how
I'm a scientist. I wish I
Oh.
was a herbalist. One day I will be a herbalist, but I'm a scientist that researches herbal medicines. And it was
Right.
always my intention to go into herbal medicines. I want to bridge the gap between natural medicines and
Yeah.
science, which is why I did my degree in human biology, and I did a master's in medicinal natural products from phytochemistry, and now I'm a
Right.
researcher at Kew Gardens. But the
Yeah.
difference between me and a herbalist is that a herbalist can diagnose you. I can't do that. I can
Oh,
make
I
a
see.
formulation, but I can't diagnose you.
Oh, does that get mixed up a lot then?
Yeah, all the
Really?
time, all the
Yeah.
time. And they've got a really, sorry if I just start rambling.
Please ramble
um
away.
they've got like a really brilliant way. Herbalists treat really holistically, and it's something like I teach at herbalism schools. I know a lot about herbalism, but they'll work really holistically. So for example, with traditional pharmaceutical science, or biomedicine, which is what my degree was in, we sort of, if there's something wrong with a liver, we'll look at the receptor and treat that.
Right.
Whereas a herbalist will look at the system and say, okay, there's something wrong with the liver. Okay, we need to support the gallbladder as well, because that supports the liver, and then support the blood to, get the nutrients around well, and get rid of the toxins, etc. So
Yeah.
I'm like a herbal scientist.
Amazing. And so at what point did you sort of discover that herbs was your thing? Because science is such a broad field, isn't it? And I suppose when you go into it, you sort of get the whole lot, and then you sort of refine and refine and refine a little bit more. So what was that sort of trigger for you where you knew that this was sort of your niche?
So it's a bit of a crazy story, actually.
Yeah.
When I was 16, it was just before I was picking my A levels, and I had a dream about a name, and I could not shake
Wow.
the name. And usually you forget your dreams, but it was the next evening, and it was just pounding in my head. So I thought, right, I'll Google it.
Yeah.
And so I researched it, and it came up with this guy in India who'd set up camps for thousands of people, merging plant medicines and biotechnology.
Wow.
And it just flooded over me. This is exactly what you're going to do with your life. And I was open to herbal medicines
Wow.
anyway, because I had really, really bad eczema my whole life, over
Mm,
my whole body. And in chronic conditions, the pharmaceutical model doesn't really have a treatment. So my
right.
mum was taking it to naturopaths and all these different things, and it
Yeah.
helped. So I was open to it. But then after I had that dream, interestingly, I had another dream a couple of weeks later of another name. So I thought, right, I'll Google it, and it came up with this bloke who was just shouting all this propaganda against herbal medicines, like, oh, they say they can cure cancer, it's all nonsense, it's all hippie faff. So I felt like that was a sign, like,
Right.
this is what you're going into. And so I
Wow.
chose to do my degree in human biology because I wanted a scientific understanding of the body. I wanted to bridge the gap. And then
Yeah.
I did my master's in medicinal natural products and phytochemistry. I learned to put things in the lab, learned about active compounds, quality control, indigenous medicines, all sorts.
Wow.
Um,
Nice.
yeah,
Mm.
it's quite a blessed journey. But I
Yeah.
trained in massage and therapy as well because I think you need more than science to heal. And I'm
Absolutely.
basically driven by healing. How can we get the most out of it? We have to learn to heal. So
Absolutely. And of course the breath is a massive part of that as well. And it's interesting, I've been hearing more and more in the podcast I've been listening to and sort of different articles and things, how science and spirituality are really not very far apart at all. Some people talk of them as these separate worlds, but actually I don't think really you can have one without the other. What do you think?
that's a really interesting question. So the way I view it is that they're both important aspects of what it means to be human.
Mm,
Understanding the natural world around us and analysing it is fascinating and important in order for us to get the most out of life. And I love science for that.
yeah.
But if you feel something in every essence of your being, we should not dismiss that because you can't prove it in a petri dish.
Yes.
We have a knowing the same way that animals take herbal medicines themselves. Cows eat blackberry leaves when they're pregnant. There's certain birds that will eat different leaves when they've got bacterial infections. We have this innate connection to nature that can't quite be explained yet, and there's not the funding to do it because you can't make a product out of it that you can sell.
Right. Right.
But
Yes.
should we close our eyes and dismiss this gorgeous phenomena that is part of our species? No.
Yeah.
And I do find it a bit frustrating that a lot of the time with spiritual practices, it's frustrating and interesting, but it's almost like because we've moved the church to the side and put science as our god,
Right.
and I'm skeptical of doing putting anything too high up because it becomes dogmatic and we
Yeah.
lose criticism of it, and science is full of flaws. And I find it frustrating sometimes when people speak of spiritual experiences or practices and then they find the need to try and be like, oh, it's quantum metaphysics, blah blah blah. Like, who cares?
Let it
You
be. Let
felt
it
it
be.
works for you. Yeah, you don't have
Mm,
to put it in a narrative of science for it to be healing to you.
absolutely.
My career doesn't make sense. The decisions I make they don't have any rationality or logic behind them, but I am so blessed to be on this path. It's been so fulfilling, and so I
Wow.
don't want to question it. Some things just are.
Some things just are. Do you know what? I think that's brilliant. And often I think in this world where so much feels the need to be explained, that the spiritual experiences, as you say, it's almost like it's just too simple. I get that a lot with breath work, where
Mm.
I'll sort of tell people that just by lightening your breath, by making your breath a little bit more effortless, there are profound health benefits. And a lot of people say, what do you mean? I've been breathing my entire life. There's got to, you mean I don't take anything or I don't wear a big contraption? I'm like, well, there are, you can wear sports masks and things, but it's just the breath. And
Mm.
it really is just your experience. And there is no ABC of the breath. And I'm sure there's no ABC of herbal medicine either, that it's per person, per experience.
Yeah, totally. And also science is based off of, if you observe something consecutively and you can't disprove it, then
Mm.
that's evidence.
Right.
And if consecutively I've felt these things and followed them and they've led me into blissful states,
Yeah.
that's evidence. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm a theist or anything like that, but I believe there's patterns in life and that we can cultivate a lot of beauty,
Mm,
especially when we heal. And that for me is spirituality. It doesn't have to be about spirits or ancestors or anything like that. It's just deep gratuity that we're here, the beautiful things that we can experience, and getting in touch with our center and breath allows us to integrate ourselves, to sort of clear the rubble of the mind that the world weighs on us, you know, and get in touch with that spark within, and to be able to experience things like awe and joy and peace and dancing and all these different things with presence, you know. There we find perfection, and there we're like, oh my god, it's amazing being a human, you know. And that for me is spirituality.
You know, I am fascinated by herbal medicine and using herbs as aids to us purely because of the groundedness of herbs. Groundedness, I think that's a word.
I understand.
That they are rooted, literally rooted to the earth. They are grounded, you know, they come from the ground. It's so it feels a part of us already. We are the earth. We are, you know, we're all one of each other, including all the trees and everything, I believe. So, you know, it feels so much more natural. I mean, which is the prevalent word, really, you know, to take a herb if I was suffering with PMS or anxiety, to almost allow the earth to aid me, which is interesting, because to aid the earth, and then, you know, I then think of things like global warming, where you then should protect the earth in return.
Totally. It's a really beautiful symbiotic relationship we have, and I believe that well-being is about balance and connection, and nature something we are intrinsically connected to, and this beautiful cycle that the earth will give us medicines, and in return we give love to the earth, you know. I sound like a right hippie, but
no, but you know, it's true. I mean, like, do we think we sound like hippies just because society has told us that narrative? Probably, you know. So
true.
in 50 years this could be normal talk, and sort of, you know, people talking about paracetamol could be absolute loons. So
It's true.
who knows?
I do think like that sometimes. Like, we'll look back and be like, oh my god, the treatments that they gave in pharmaceuticals are so crude, and I'm not sullying pharmaceuticals. I think they're amazing and they definitely have their place, but nature has its place too, you know.
Like you said, it's all about balance. I mean, in terms of the research, in terms, of course, we've talked about that you don't need to prove it, but in terms of some of the research, it is really interesting, isn't it, to look into what has been found. Especially, I'm really interested in terms of women's health and PMS. I think women's health is vastly understudied, especially in terms of alternative medicine, rather than things like the contraceptive pill and all these different forms where we're really messing with our hormones. And it sort of feels like, in my opinion, of course, that you're just whacking a plaster on something and not getting to the root, there's that word again, of the problem. So do you know much about the sort of available herbal medicine, or the best herbal medicine for things like PMS, like serving you through your menstrual cycle?
Absolutely. And firstly, I want to go back to it's great that we can embrace nature for its medicines, but I love the fact that science is catching up and has started to investigate it properly and look at clinical trials and see like how well does this plant actually work, because it's really easy to become sensationalist and dogmatic on the other end of, oh, it's a plant, it's natural, it will only be good for me and it will work really well. Some of them aren't great, you know. So we need to see like what are the active compounds. We need to standardize these so our medicines have the same amount every time, you know. Plants are variable, and we need to look at science, how it works in the body, and that's what I love. It's a marriage between the two of understanding these plants better helps us heal ourselves better.
I mean, there's some really strong plants, of course. Now we know with psychedelics and you know, mushrooms and ayahuasca, and there's so many different plants that can have some crazy effects, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But women's health, I am fascinated what you know.
Okay, so women's health, again, this is something I think we're going to look back on and be like, oh my god, they didn't track their cycles. So we have 4 different hormonal phases in our cycle, and at different points estrogen dips. So for example, there's a book called Period Power by Maisie Hill, which is fantastic. It teaches you about the physiology in a really accessible way of what happens in your cycles.
Great.
And she calls each season, summer, autumn, winter, which is when your period starts,
Love
and
that.
spring.
Yeah.
And when we tap into our cycles, there's different powers we can tap into, if you will, and then different things that we can protect ourselves against. So, for example, in autumn and winter, so just before your period starts, your estrogen dips and your energy levels go. You become a lot less sociable, a lot more introverted, a bit more irritable.
Yeah.
And so that's not a time to be booking your meetings or your talk
Yeah.
and those sorts of things. This is a time for decision making where your intuition is heightened,
Yeah.
and sitting with yourself. And also the things that cause you emotional pain then, listen to them, because they were there before, they're just louder now. So take
Right.
this time as a
Ah.
time to hear what you need, what is making you misaligned.
Yeah.
With regards to the irritability that can come with PMS and being in your autumn and winter, because of the estrogen dips, a lot of causes. That's a big cause of fluctuation in mood,
Yeah.
and things like red clover and star anise and yarrow, they mimic estrogen, so
Ah.
um, it can help ease some of the side effects of that period of time. There was an example of a study with PMS pain as well. Um, there was a study in Iran of over 90 women, and they had really bad PMS symptoms, and they had yarrow tea 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening, just a cup of it
Yeah.
throughout their periods, and the severity of their pain reduced a lot,
Wow.
as did the length of the period, so that's great.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Amazing. Yeah.
And then you've got things like valerian or cramp bark as well, which when your womb you spasms, the muscles involuntarily contract, causing those cramps. And
Right.
valerian relaxes the nervous system in that area so that you don't get the spasms and you don't get the pain. And cramp bark is
Wow.
brilliant for that as well.
Right.
CBD, absolutely love that. My
Mm.
advice is when you've got pain, take it under your tongue and absorb it straight into your blood there, because when you swallow it, it has to go through the gut and then go through the liver. By the time
Ah,
it gets to your
right.
blood, you absorb a lot less. So
Yeah.
take it under
Tiny
your tongue.
detail. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
get
Yeah.
more for your money as well, because it's not cheap.
Yeah. And with something like the bark, would that go into a tea as well? How do you actually ingest something like that?
So the bark, it's good to take it in a tincture, because bark is quite hardy. You
Mm.
really need to boil it up to get the tea to take the active compounds out.
Right.
So a tincture is basically when something is left in alcohol for a long time, and the alcohol is basically really sticky to the active compound. So in that little bottle, you can get, for example, 20 times the strength of the
Oh,
plant
right. Yeah.
than you would if it was just a tea.
Mm.
Um, and valerian's really good like that as well. But yarrow, you can have a tea. Red clover is a tea as well. Red
Mm.
clover is also great for your lymphatic system, which
Okay.
is like the sewers of your
Yeah.
body. Takes out the toxins, and it makes sure the blood isn't coagulated, so it doesn't stick together, so it flows better. And it's
Mm.
full of coumarins, which act like scavengers and like pick up all the toxins and take them out of your body. And so it can make your skin look really nice as well. It's a wonderful herb.
Oh, amazing. That's interesting with the lymphatic system. I've just been doing a guided breathing journey on my YouTube channel around the sacral chakra, which is heavily also linked to the lymphatic system. So that sacral chakra is just below the
Oh,
navel. Yeah. And so it's sort of focusing on Ida Nadi breathing, and just nadis are circulatory channels, energy carriers, and very, very much compared to the nervous system and even sort of blood vessels, carriers of energy or of oxygen, or anything really in the
interesting.
body. Yeah. And so it's really interesting comparison about ridding yourself of those toxins in combination with breath work. Of, I suppose that would be more bringing your body back into balance in terms of your lymphatic system, and restoring homeostasis and regulating. And I think the power of the mind with something like those herbs is something definitely not to be underestimated, because
absolutely.
the power of the breath is the power of the mind, right? It's you are harnessing your mind to sort of increase circulation, to sort of almost manipulate certain areas to unlock and open and expand and be invigorated. And so I really think the power of the two combined should never be underestimated. What do you think?
Totally. Honestly, everything you say, I've got like 100 points.
Please
Talk for hours.
say them all.
So may I ask first, the sacral chakra, emotionally, what does it line up to?
So it's a lot about a free flow of expression, pleasure, sensuality, passion. It's quite linked to sexual desire, but it's also very much linked to creativity, and sort of those quite big emotions as well.
Interesting, because the lymphatic system is a system of like tubes around your body, and it doesn't have its own pumping system the way that the blood does with the heart, and so it often does get very congested, and you get like edema and fluid in certain areas, and you need to like rub it around. So it's about facilitating flow and energy. It's interesting how it connects.
Of course.
What was the question again? Sorry. Oh, so the placebo effect.
Yes.
Right. So this is something that, the human mind is something else. It's sculpted the evolution of a planet. It is remarkable.
Yeah.
And stepping into the acceptance that our mind and our body are connected and communing with that and utilizing that power is going to be the next step for us healing, and our consciousness as well, and our emotional healing as well. It's only in the last decade that we've actually started to acknowledge that the mind has its own problems as well.
It's
And
crazy.
it's honestly, it's nuts. Like, we're so focused on the physical, and only now we're starting to realize that our mind does something else. But I think that the placebo effect is the fact that we're not looking at that as a fascinating phenomena is stupid. And
it's being looked at more and more, is it? I mean, of course, I am not a research scientist like yourself, but I've definitely seen it pop up a bit more and more about the placebo, especially in terms of COVID times, in terms of the placebo effect. I think I was listening to something about vitamin D and a placebo effect, that if which of course vitamin D is not a drug as such, a vitamin, but that expectation of it sort of brightening your mood or making you feel sunnier, is that your mind, or is that the vitamin D? It's,
well, that's the thing. It's like, so there is a little bit, scientists are talking about it a little bit more, but the way that science works now is that you get loads of people, you give them a drug, and you give some of them a sugar pill, and every experiment has usually around 30% of people in the placebo group who heal with absolutely nothing. And they give them the placebo because they know for a fact that people are gonna heal whether they have the medicine or not, just because they think they are. And so they need to measure how pharmacologically active this actual medicine is, and then minus the placebo effect, if that makes sense. And so every experiment, they're doing this because they're acknowledging, the mind-brain connection, and it's sort of seen as like an annoying thing on the side that's sort of getting in the way of actual results. Hold on. Turn around. Look at this phenomena. If you tell
hold up, girl,
your body if you tell your body that you're going to heal, if your mind convinces you of that, and the two integrate, commune, and work together, then your physiology literally changes, and you're able to step to that point of balance and healing. And so this is something that should be embraced. This is absolutely something that should be embraced. And herbal medicines, like, people say it's just placebo. Not true. There's a bountiful pharmacological effect. But in all medicine, be it pharmaceutical, herbal, whatever, if we're clearly being shown that working with the mind can bring us to a higher state and a better state, then we need to do that, and we need to connect with our breath and allow it to do that as well. We're so
Yeah.
segmented. Sorry, again, I'm going on a big ramble, but
Go for it.
it's the way that science works. It's very mechanistic. You know, we started with dissecting bodies and labeling, and this does this, and then we went down to the cell and then to the receptor, and it's amazing that we've zoomed in like that. But it's meant that it's become disconnected, and we've lost view of the holistic whole of what affects what in the body and what effect that will have to us overall. Sort of the same way we've done with farming. We find one plant we like, we shift all the land to plant that one thing without an acknowledgement of the biodiversity and the ecology and what effects that will have.
The entire ecosystem.
Yeah. So it's like our body's patterns and ecosystems map each other, you know, and stepping into nature's cycles and being respectful of the way that nature works means that we'll live more harmoniously. A step into nature is a step into balance, and so we need to step out and look at the whole.
Yeah, that is incredible. I mean, even in terms of, you know, the herbs sort of being labeled as a placebo when they're clearly not, you know, there's evidence, of course, that they have you said a pharmaceutical effect. Is that the word?
Pharmacological effect.
Pharmacological effect. Oh, great word. A pharmacological effect. The same with breathwork in terms of building resilience by increasing heart rate variability, and they're starting to prove that now, that, you know, the sort of bigger or higher your heart rate variability, the more flexible, the more sort of your body is able to respond rather than react to stress. You're in more coherence. There's all this research with heart math, head heart coherence, that connection between the two, that again, like you said, it's not transactional, they're not separate, we're a whole being, whereas the head and heart is talked about so separately so often. And one of my favorite sayings says, I can't remember the exact length, but it says something like the distance between your head and your heart's about, like, you know, a couple of inches or something, but it's the longest journey you'll ever take. Which I love. I know. I wish I'll definitely get the exact phrase, because that would make it all the better. But you get the essence of it. That a lot of us really do think of our mind and our body separately, our head and our heart, or, you know, our gut feeling. It's like I had a gut feeling, but I was just stuck in my head. And you're like, well, it's all the same. You're in the same body. So
totally. And I think sorry.
No, please carry on.
I was going to say, like, I think with breath work, which is because I've only come into breath work really in the last month.
Yeah.
And I think what's so remarkable about it is how quickly it works.
Yeah.
In 10 minutes, you can go from feeling super depressed to feeling all right. And, you know, in a fast food culture we have, where we want instant gratification constantly, to be able to do that it's just remarkable. It's honestly, it's a superpower, and I can't believe, well, I say I can't believe we've only discovered it now, but people have been talking about it for thousands
of years. Yeah, but again, going back to something you said at the beginning, breathing is free. You know, you can't sell breathing in your local pharmacy. It's not on a shelf. You know, it's a superpower that is within us, and it's accessible to every human being, no matter your race, no matter where you come from, no matter how much money you have or what color you have. Everybody breathes, and that is, I think, the essence of what fascinates me about breathing, is everything breathes. So, you know,
it really is.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I want to come back to as well your knowledge of when we're talking about PMS in terms of anxiety, because I know with COVID and coming into a third lockdown now in the UK, I mean, there's a lot of people saying, and I would agree, that we are in a mental health crisis as much as we are in a pandemic, you know, of COVID. It's just as horrific on the mental health side. And I know, as well as breath work, that herbal medicine can be a great aid of that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's many different herbal medicines for anxiety. And let me explain a bit about the physiology of anxiety
Yeah,
first.
please.
So our nervous system is what makes our thoughts and, you know, emotions. It's what creates new memories. It's what controls our emotions as well, and it works by firing electricity. So in
Right.
your brain or down your spine, it's electricity firing.
Wow.
When too much electricity is fired, we become anxious, become really jittery, and basically when our body has an inbuilt system, a receptor called the GABA receptor, gamma aminobutyric acid, I think I pronounced it right. But when this receptor is stimulated, the electricity firing slows right down. And
Right.
that's the receptor that benzodiazepines stimulate. It's what alcohol stimulates, which is why too much stimulation of this makes people slur and lose control of their movement, etc.
Right.
But stimulating this receptor helps us calm down and chill out. And there are many different plants that stimulate this receptor. So, for example, firstly, I'll talk about ashwagandha. And I'm going to talk about it because it's what we call it. It's a class of plants called adaptogens,
Right.
which basically their job is to bring you back into balance.
Mm.
Um, it will work differently on you than it will to me
Right.
because you have too much energy and need to calm down. I might need to be lifted.
Yeah.
And you know, our bodies are always trying to bring themselves back into balance and homeostasis.
Yeah.
And these plants, well, the difference between plants and pharmaceuticals is pharmaceuticals have one active compound.
Right.
Plants have hundreds or thousands, and so affect
Wow.
many different parts of our bodies. And these adaptogens, our bodies can extract what they need from it. And they have different qualities, and ashwagandha is one that is tends to be calming and soothing. And so there's been um, clinical trials. Clinical trials are experiments where you get different types, where ones where you do it on cells, ones on animals, and ones on people. And
Mm.
clinical trials are the ones on people, so they're the best evidence because we know
Right.
it works in the body. And there has been many trials for things like insomnia and anxiety and the different manifestations of anxiety, you know,
Mm.
like OCD, where ashwagandha has proven to alleviate people's anxiety, help them sleep better,
Wow.
lower level of cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It's the stress
Yeah.
hormone that makes you forget everything. So say you go into an exam and you know for everything on that paper, but you go in and you forget it all. It's because you get a flush of cortisol and you can't remember. And you
Wow.
know, when you're anxious,
Yeah.
being scatty doesn't help, does it? So
No.
ashwagandha is a wonderful one. It will take a couple of weeks to kick in, but be
Right.
patient. The way that I see it is, if your body's been going a certain way for X amount of time, you're going to need a certain amount of time to come back, you know? Another brilliant one as well is passion flower.
Mm.
That's been shown to be as useful as oxazepam for anxiety,
Wow.
which I love when plants are as good as pharmaceuticals, if not better. But
Yeah.
you know, it means you can operate heavy machinery and not be slurring your words and all sorts.
Yeah.
Uh, and again, it might take a bit more time to kick in, but stay patient with it. Valerian as well, that's really good for insomnia, and that's good for anxiety as well. And then
Mm.
you have teas like lemon balm, lavender. Again, these work with the GABA receptors.
Yeah.
So they're helpful. Licorice root as well, that works with your adrenal glands, um,
Amazing.
which is important because that generates our stress hormones.
Yeah.
So there's a myriad of different things that which are great. But what I would like to talk about is really important is quality control.
Right.
Because the quality control in the industry is so bad, it's shocking. There was a
Really.
study, really bad,
Oh
and no one's looking
gosh.
at anything about it.
Mm.
There was a study, this is normal, a study of 35 different ginkgo supplements bought on the high street.
Right.
Ginkgo is a plant which increases blood flow to the brain.
Okay.
They're studying it for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and all sorts, but
Yeah.
it's good for you know, concentration, etc. But out of 35, only 2 were medicinal grade. Only 6 of them had what they said they did in, and the rest of
My
them
God.
weren't worth the bottle. They were
Well,
bought.
and they're being sold on the high street. They're not being sort of tested to be sold. They are on the shelf.
Yeah, they're on the shelf, and some of the most expensive ones, who they spent loads of money doing amazing branding, had none of the plant in. And that's common. That is common practice in England. I've actually published research on it, and the problem is that because we're in England, there's so many rules. We expect that something has gone through X amount of red tape to get on the shelf, but it's not the case, and no one's looking because nobody cares, because the government do not care about herbs. They don't.
Oh God. Right.
So there's a lot. It's a
That's
problem.
massively important. I'm so glad you brought that up. God.
And the problem as well is that, say there's a supply chain of 60 people, so between the farm and selling it on the shop, there's so many people, nobody's tracking where the plants are coming from, and each time it goes down the supply chain, they're taking a bit of the plant out and putting something else in.
Oh
And
no.
or they're putting a cheaper plant in, or they're getting the names mixed up, because botanical nomenclature is a whole other thing. So it can be very overwhelming, but I can give you some tips on how to find good quality.
Yeah.
So firstly, they need to be able to tell you where it's come from,
Okay.
like what country it's come from, because if
Okay.
they can't tell you that, it's not traceable and you don't know
Right.
who's getting handling it. They also need to be able to tell you which species it is. So for example, rhodiola rosea is the medicinal plant, right?
Right.
But there's many different species of rhodiola. And
Mm.
so if they're telling you a different type of rhodiola, that's not, if they can't tell you the species, then there's a chance that it's been mixed up with other plants, you know.
Right.
And
Oh.
also as well, if it's full of bulking agents and
Mm.
chalk or whatever they put in, just don't bother.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, say for example, in Chinese medicines, they prescribe herbs in the kilos. To get
Right.
something extracted to the point you can fit it in a pill, you need every milligram that's in that pill,
Right.
not bulking agents.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and also if
Gosh.
something's got THR on it, like a Vogel, that's a really good sign as well.
Right. Okay. Good. I did not know any of this. And when you think of even supplements, which is a huge industry,
Mm.
and is of course so linked to herbal medicine. And would you call herbal medicine a supplement, or are they sort of two different things?
It's herbal medicines can be supplements, but they can be
Right.
other things as well.
Oh, so right, it's both. Okay. I didn't want to mix up the two, but that's it's crazy, isn't it? But I suppose it's a lack of education with people high up in the UK of herbal medicine, and so then an ignorance that comes. But it's such a shame because people are spending their well-earned money just trying to improve their health, and
Mm,
if you're not getting what it says on the tin,
yeah,
um that's a real shame, and just it's such a loss to the magic of herbal medicine that you've just been speaking of, that why not have two herbal medicines on the shelf, like you said, that are um worth their whack, than have 16 and actually only two of them actually are what they say they are. It makes no
yeah,
sense.
exactly. It drives me nuts. And you see, people are very invested in their branding and less invested in the quality control, because the problem is things get lab tested. I've seen it, but the people lie on the lab results.
Wow.
So, and but because they've got oh no, it's lab tested, I can get away with it. Nobody can
Mm.
do anything to me. So they'll just use that. It's bad, but it's a cultural thing. So in Germany and Switzerland, where plants are respected by medical professionals,
Yeah.
they've got really high quality control. So you can be more certain that if you're buying in Switzerland, things have to get lab tested to get sold. So
Right.
if you're buying a Swiss medicine, you know it's good. Or
Right.
in Germany as well, they've got higher quality control standards. So that's
Yeah.
also another pointer to look at.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Take a holiday to Switzerland or Germany, obviously post pandemic, and to get your herbal medicine.
You can get some in England as well, like
Mm.
Schwab and A Vogel and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. I mean, talking about all these incredible herbs for the things we've talked about, PMS, anxiety, we could go on and on and on, of course, insomnia. Um, I am interested on your opinion. We talked about this prior to the episode, of course, that um, everything is so interconnected, isn't it, in terms that, you know, if you could take this herbal medicine or drink the tea, or, you know, however you choose to ingest it, and if you then are sedentary for your entire life, and have a really poor diet, and get no sleep, and drink, you know, fountains of alcohol, then that herbal medicine is probably not gonna do everything for you that you wish it would. What is your opinion on this, in things, everything working in conjunction together, that health is a big pie, and all these parts of breath, herbal medicine, exercise, diet, all the rest is only one little slice?
I think you're absolutely spot on, and I'm so glad you're talking about it, because people become so impassioned and in love with what they do, you know,
Yeah.
step back and say you need something else as well. And I think that, like, it's a brilliant point that you're bringing up. The way that I see health and well-being is, I view it as a tree, and
Yeah.
right now the only branch on that tree is pharmaceuticals,
Right.
when really it should be a branch, and another branch should be herbal medicines and nutrition and breathwork and exercise and all these different things. And, you know, we're complex beings. There are many different facets to our well-being, many more things than one than we need to be well. If it was just one, simple, sort your career out. No, like, you know, if it was just money, or if it was just you need to be fit. But it's really interconnected, and everything offers us different blessings and different powers to tap into.
Yeah.
And the way I sort of see it, if you've got your cup and you need to fill it up, and there's certain things which are gonna take away from that cup, like poor nutrition or a lack of exercise, and these different good things that we bring can help fill that cup up. And I think one of the most important things people can do is create a well-being toolkit.
Yeah.
And so in that toolkit, you've got the herbs, and you've got a few breathwork exercises that you know are going to help you, etc. And for different states in your life and different states of well-being, you know which different tool you can use. That is the most empowering and most important thing that you can do with your life, I think, is to
I agree.
become well acquainted with these different things that can help us, and just let your pile of good things grow. And another thing that I would like to say, which I think is really important, is it can get so overwhelming. Like, I've gone through phases where I feel quite depressed. I'm not exercising, I'm eating junk food, I can't bother to do anything. I just want to sit on my phone. That's it.
Yeah.
And it can be really overwhelming to be like, okay, I'm going to start exercising for an hour every day. I'm going to do breath work, take all the herbal medicines, clean, vegan, blah, blah, blah. That's very difficult and not sustainable.
No.
So pick things up one thing at a time, and then you're going to drop it for a bit, because that's life. And then you pick it up again, and then you drop it again, and you pick it up again, and eventually the gaps in between you dropping it become smaller and smaller, and it becomes part of your life. You know, I
Yeah.
used to get so frustrated. Sorry, I'm on one today. You got me in a really chatty mood. But I used to get so frustrated at myself, because I would, you know, lose the weight, or do loads of exercise or whatever, and get to the point, and then I'd sort of get there and be like, yay, and drop it again, and then I'd be like, you're so stupid, why did you drop it? You had it. What did you do that for? Right? I get so frustrated at myself, and then I realize, like, it's not this linear
No.
timeline. You get there and it's done. It's not how it
No.
goes. It's about integrating it into your being and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
learning to
Yeah.
pick it back up again, you know?
Yeah, and I agree. I totally see it as actually like learning to ride a horse, where, you know, because we say we fell off the horse, right? And like you said, you know, you will actually, falling off the horse is very, very necessary, because you need to fall off the horse to understand what is working and what's not working. And then as you learn to ride a little bit more and more and more, you're going to fall off less and less and less, until you're on this beautiful gliding gallop through your life, and then that's great. But it's really necessary, and I think this is actually what people forget, is that it is a journey, like we've been saying, in terms of building that toolkit. Like you say, the first breath exercise you do, or the first herbal medicine you take, may not work. It may not do anything, but you may need to try another one, and then on the third try you may have the most profound experience of your life and be like, this is life changing for me. But unless you get back on the horse and keep trying.
Yeah, literally. What you're saying reminds me of dating. It's like, imagine going on one date and you're like, no, don't love him, not doing it ever again.
Not my husband. Never mind. That's it then. Alone for the rest of my life. Which there's nothing wrong with, by the way, to you know, drop a little bit
it's
of
nice, quiet life.
yeah, it's a, you know, it's a smashing life.
Yeah.
A smashing life as a single gal. But yeah, no, honestly, I love everything you've said. Absolutely. For someone just looking to get into herbal medicine, I certainly, after this conversation, definitely want to research more and sort of try more, and really as well being careful with quality control, because that's an incredible point there. But looking for someone like me, or like I'm sure many people listening, looking to sort of start with herbal medicine, where do you start?
That's a really good question. So firstly, I'm setting up my educational platform. So there's going to
Oh,
be
fab.
written infographics on the science behind each plant, how it works in the body,
Right.
and also classes as well. Botanical School of Herbal Medicine do a fantastic short course if you want to do one just for yourself, not to become a herbalist, and you can become a herbalist there as well, but that's good for just teaching yourself.
Yeah.
Follow the Herb Society. There's many different books. Dr. Axe has a fantastic blog on natural healing as well. There's a lot of information out there. Get yourself a good book and connect with the people on social that you find interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, just keep. There's always so much to learn. I've got so much to learn. We all do. So
We're all beginners, 100%, 100%. Until you've been doing it, you know, 50, 60 years, I think you're going to be a beginner. You know,
yeah.
actually, you speaking of sort of getting a book and connecting with people, actually, something I do want to bring up that I really love about herbs in general and everything I've seen so far on social media, because I'm quite new on my herbal journey. But what I love is the sort of videos of people mixing things up at home and making, like I even saw you making a lovely bath mix at home. And so it wasn't just buy a packet, whack it in. It was a process of, or a bit like cooking, of making something at home. And even in terms of families and partners and, you know, kids and parents, that's a wonderful bonding experience of mixing and making herbs together to serve your bodies. I think that's wonderful.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because you know, going back to the holistic facets of healing, working with the plants, it's a ritual in itself. You know, same way making a cup of tea, as you go downstairs, you put the kettle on, you pick the mug, do you know what I mean, you pick which tea. There's a whole the mug. there's a whole thing to it. And working with plants, you know, herbalists, I love them so much. It's the most amazing community, because they're so happy and special, because they're working with plants all day. Like, how can you not be, you know? And it's so charming. So I've got over 200 jars of herbs in my room, and I just love, like,
I'm so jealous.
Like, this one does that, this one does that, mix it all together. And there's so many different ways you can work with plants as well. So totally, it's like, it's about nurturing that connectivity with nature, and herbal medicines is a beautiful way to do it, both when you create with them and when you ingest them.
Yeah, and what an incredible way as well to educate yourself, no matter how old you are. I really, it bothers me. I say that because it really bothers me when we think of just education as children. That education ends when you're sort of in your early 20s, and it's like, no, you know, you can do a degree when you're 50, or you can do whatever you want. And so learning, which is why I love how you've brought up the short courses, even that you don't need to become a professional qualified herbalist. You can just do a short course to just educate yourself about our world and the incredible nature that surrounds us, and that can actually serve our bodies and minds. That isn't that enough? That's incredible.
Totally. Honestly, everything you say, I'm like, right, I've got 100 more things. But I saw this really good quote once, and I thought it was beautiful. It said, and I'm going to butcher it, but it said something along the lines of, like, you know, we live in a society where you have to monetize everything you're good at, turn it into a career. And it was like, in this society made us, because people say, no, I don't dance, I don't sing, I'm not good at it. And we started viewing these things, instead of human behaviors, we started viewing them as jobs. And it's like, learning is a human behavior. It's what makes our species so special. And
Yeah.
learning is one of the most powerful antidotes to bad mental health, because you're filling your mind with interesting and beautiful new things.
Stimulation. Yeah.
Exactly. And when you don't, the only thing you've got to think about is your situation and your problems, and you just put them on a treadmill and go round and round again. When you bless yourself with new knowledge, it's like awe-inspiring and
Yeah.
fascinating, and it's the best thing in the world. So do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you unlock a new part of yourself, don't you? Every
Mm.
time you learn something new, which is why I adore doing this podcast, because I meet someone new every week, and now I know that I'll spend this week delving into herbalism and delving into herbs and looking and following, connecting with new people. You know, and the next week, you know, maybe I talk to, say, a triathlete, and then you spend time sort of trying out a new sort of run combined with a cycle, and reading
Mm.
an autobiography of someone who's done a big triathlon. You know, anyway,
Yeah.
it's such a wonderful thing to have an open, expansive mind that is not bound by sort of things that society has told us, that unless you are of a certain level, you cannot do. Like, I love how you brought up the dancing, because I've heard that a lot. Is that I used to be in musical theatre a lot, so I trained professionally in dance, and then someone sort of who was just in a totally different field wouldn't want to dance with me, because they're like, well, I'm not a dancer. And you said, well, no, we're all movers. You can lift your
Totally.
arm, can't you? And it's like, well, get up and have a boogie. Like, come on. And I really hope that our world develops more and more in that way, that people do just do something purely for the journey and the experience, rather than, because the career or the qualification, that's the outcome, right? That's the
Totally.
goal. What about the journey? What about just doing something with no expectation of getting anything at the end? Just saying that was a great time.
100%. And also, I must say, you're a super wise woman for starting a podcast, because it means you're just enriching yourself all the time. I love that you made that decision.
No, honestly, me too. So, and it's a pleasure to have people like you on, and just share these powerful conversations, because you don't know, someone could be listening to this, couldn't they, having a super down a day, where like you said, you know, you've experienced, and me too, where you're like, I don't want to get out of bed, you know, just give me a pack of biscuits and that'll do, and just cancel today. And actually knowing that something like your story and this podcast could actually make someone go, you know what, I'm actually going to get out of bed today, and I'm going to, you know, go and actually just walk around a park and open my eyes to the nature that's around me, or go to Kew Gardens, you know, when it's open, and you know, explore. It's a wonderful thing. So I'm really grateful for having you on.
Thank you. I've
Honestly,
thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I hope to
yeah,
like stay connected and stuff, and
absolutely, yeah,
really enjoy what you're
I
about.
have one more question for you.
Please do.
If you had to pick today, and this is going to be hard for you, I know, if you have 200 jars. If you had to pick a herb of the day today, what would it be?
Okay, so
What's
I
your
would pick
intuition telling you?
maca. I would pick maca, because maca is this plant from Southern America,
Mm.
the roots, and it's really good for hormone balancing. It's shown to be really effective for women going through menopause as well, helping them deal
Mm.
with the symptoms.
Fab.
But also, it's really good at giving you more energy, and it tastes delicious when you mix it with cocoa. Ah,
Yeah.
can I pick cacao as well? Because them two
Yeah.
together are the
Yeah,
best.
I've heard maca powder and cacao, or you
Yeah,
can make a beautiful sort of cacao drink with that, can't you? Like a hot, tastes like hot cocoa, but better.
yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like because maca's really like multi and gorgeous, but I love anything that will give me more energy. And
Yeah.
cacao, I'm not talking about like Cadbury's cacao
No.
quality, ceremonial grade, full of
Yeah.
theobromine and anandamide. It works on the same receptors that cannabis does, but
Wow.
without all the drowsiness. And
Yeah.
it was known as food of the gods. It's been used in millennia in ceremonies,
Yeah.
in tribes. and it's really heart opening and really good to just connect with yourself and like have a mug of it and just map out your life, what's going on, how do I feel, integrate, breathe, connect with yourself. And going back to what you were saying earlier about it's the journey and the wellbeing toolkit, it's sometimes you go from feeling absolutely terrible to just bad, and that's an improvement.
That's a step. That's a step.
And it's about just like stepping into the flow of that. Sometimes you go from bad to good, and that's great, but you know.
Oh, amazing, Rebecca, it's been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been brilliant.
Oh, thank you for your kind words and how enthusiastic you are about what I do. It's really
You're
sweet.
You're welcome. Oh, last thing, where can people find you?
So Laz the plant scientist, LAZ the plant scientist is my Instagram. And that's going to be the website as well, laztheplants.co.uk. I'm going to have a newsletter soon. So please subscribe. Fabulous. And watch out. I'll be doing more educational things and selling botanical creations and herbal medicines that I make. So
great, fabulous. Well, all those links will be in the show notes, so anyone listening can just scroll down and follow you right away. So for now,
brilliant.
Have the most beautiful Sunday.
Thank you. Likewise. Have a lovely day.